Hey everyone, JJ from Southeast Queensland Shooters here. Today I want to bring you guys a bit of an overview and a review of the recent practical rifle training one-day barricade course that I just completed, so stay tuned. And friend Scott, he actually owns the practical rifle training and he hosts these courses along with Paul. He invited me out to go do the one-day barricade course, and it's basically designed to upskill shooters of any ability and improve their marksmanship and their rifle craft, to make them better competitors in the NRL or PRS scene. So who is this course actually designed for? The one-day course I think is a really good course that covers all of the basics and fundamentals of PRS and NRL style shooting. So if you are a new shooter and you want to get into PRS and NRL kind of shooting, this is a really good course to kind of bring you up to speed with the fundamentals and the basics of setting up your optic properly, lining yourself up behind the rifle, knowing what your scope is doing, knowing what the bullet's doing downrange, also just navigating barricades. So I'm fairly new into the sport. I've shot I think 5 or 6 NRL competitions and one centerfire PRS competition, and a lot of it's kind of just trial and error. You rock up to the barricade, you see what other people are doing, and you just try and find the most comfortable shooting position possible. So what I really liked about this course is the people offering the course, Scott and Paul. I'll get into them a little bit later. They're really experienced shooters. They've done a lot of PRS style shooting as well as active military service. These guys know their way around these barricades and obstacles really well, and it's kind of nice to just see them do it and then kind of have them instruct you on how to more proficiently navigate these barricades and also set up a more comfortable and shootable shooting position on them. So for young shooters or for new shooters, I think this is an absolutely great course that's going to help you bring your skills up to speed. But even for the more experienced guys, so I know this course is just a one-day course and it covers the fundamentals, and there's a lot more to it, and I think that's what Scott covers in the 2-day courses. So even for the more experienced shooters out there, I think this course has a lot of value as well, because I think it's really valuable to have an experienced eye stand behind you and actually look at your technique and pick it apart. Because I think if you're comfortable in a position, we're often really blind to our own mistakes shooting or executing certain skills or tasks while we're in that position. So for me personally, I like the prone position the best. I find that that's my most stable shooting position. And I didn't really think that there was much to be corrected on my technique there. However, on the day I was on my stomach shooting and Scott was standing behind me and he was observing what my muzzle was doing, and he managed to identify that I'm not pocketing that rifle stock in my shoulder quite as good as I could be, and that's why my muzzle was flipping up and to the right just a little bit. So by simply just repositioning where I'm putting the the buttstock in my shoulder, I managed to actually stay on target a lot more effectively. So I could pull the trigger and actually remain on target a lot easier with just a bit of corrective feedback. So, you know, if you're a new shooter or you're an advanced shooter, I still think there is a lot of benefit to be had from actually going to one of these courses and, you know, refreshing your skills and touching up on some of the small mistakes that we make. That's, you know, it's maybe 1%, what the 1%ers, but in the end they kind of make a big difference. So I think if you go to this course with a open mind and, you know, you're willing to learn and have corrective feedback offered, I think you can really, you know, touch up on those 1%ers that could potentially let you down under stressful or competition environments.
Yep, on it. So just stay there. I'll show you the way you.
So who are the instructors and why should you care what they have to say? So let's start with Paul. So Paul spent almost 25 years in the army, and 20 of those were years of sniping. He's now an instructor who enjoys seeing growth in shooters and their confidence, their knowledge, and their ability in all areas of shooting and marksmanship. So he met Scott when, you know, Scott was was a student during basic sniper training in around 2006, and, you know, got into shooting as a kid growing up in regional Queensland. And yeah, like I said, you know, he enjoys seeing growth in other shooters and their confidence and their knowledge and just their basic marksmanship.
You don't need to have someone to tell you how.
So Scott's got a background as an infantry soldier. He did that for 10 years, and 5 of those years they were in specialist roles. Paul was an instructor on his basic sniper course, in which, you know, they first met. And after discharging in around 2010, he started a training business to help new shooters get involved and to share his marksmanship knowledge. So like I said, yeah, Scott, he owns the practical rifle training, and yeah, this is what he does.
That there is just as stable as that there once you get down.
So if you are thinking about attending one of these courses, what will you need? So I think the first thing that you'll need is a rifle. So behind me I've got my Ruger Precision Rifle and 6.5 Creedmoor. Took that along to the day, and I've got the Warlord micro bead Barricade Bag. It's a really good bag, check them out. I'll put a link in the description. If you don't own any sandbags, or if you don't have a sling or a shooting mat, that's not really an issue. So Scott provides quite a lot of the equipment there on the day, and you get to have a try at, you know, various different bags and see which ones work well and which ones you like or don't like. But I think a rifle is the bare minimum. They recommended to take 150 rounds of ammo, which is definitely more than enough to get you through the day. I had about 250 rounds going into the day, and I only shot 83 of them, and, you know, that was plenty of shooting. So, you know, 150 rounds will definitely get you through the day.
You look a lot more comfier there.
So I'm going to run you guys through just the basics of what we covered in our shooter workspace portion of the course. The first thing that we kind of covered is our shooter workspace, and what that kind of involved was, you know, our alignment behind the rifle, you know, how to set yourself up in the most stable position to maximize your chances of actually making the hit. From there, you know, we kind of covered some basic optics, you know, how to use your optic, and, you know, how to acquire your target as quickly as possible and have the most clearest sight picture as well. We then had a period where we, you know, did some dry fire. We tested the positions, we tested, you know, our alignments, and we adjusted where necessary. And all of this was done while having Scott and Paul walk around behind us and offering us, you know, corrective feedback where they saw fit. They also covered, you know, just basic breathing. You know, where in your breath should you try and, you know, squeeze the trigger and to get your shot off. And from there, we also just talked about the importance of following through. So next up, we did some live fire drills where we engaged targets at various distances. So I'm going to watch along with you guys. So what you kind of can see is us all just taking the prone position, lying down and engaging targets, you know, from 100 meters out to 560 meters. You can see Scott and Paul walking around behind us, and they are careful looking at everything that we're doing. As you can see, every so often they'll come a bit closer and give us some individual corrective feedback.
2 mil?
Yeah.
And I was just to the right of it.
Yeah, I think that's what I was using yesterday, 2 mil.
So you can also see the level of involvement that Scott and Paul have in training experience. So they actually stand right over you, or they take the prone position with binoculars right behind you. And they're watching everything that you're doing. So you can see, Scott standing over people there. And he's looking at every small detail of what you're doing with that rifle. And it was actually at this phase of the training where Scott managed to identify a bit of an error I'm making in my supported prone position, which I was completely blind to until he pointed it out to me, and then I applied the corrective feedback, and to no surprise that everything kind of improved from there.
Yeah, fuck zeroing at 100. Let's just zero at 400. That's better.
When you break that.
So yeah, I'm sure you can see, just how involved Scott and Paul are in the corrective feedback and the training exercise that we engaged in on that day. So you can see them walking around, taking their time with each shooter. And you can see Scott really get behind that person, or even stand over the top of them to make sure that he's seeing every aspect of how you're integrating with your weapon system. And you can even see Paul there with the binoculars. He's adopted the prone position behind you, and he's got his binoculars out and he's spotting for you. So the level of engagement of the trainers, it's really excellent. They don't really miss a thing, and it's at this part of the day that Scott identified an error I make in how I shoulder my rifle to in the supported prone position, and upon correcting that small error, I was able to stay on target a lot more effectively, under recoil. So yeah, you can just see these guys are really passionate about what they're doing.
5 o'clock before, but you did have that 1 assist. Yep, just hold it back even longer. Overemphasize it for.
One of the fun parts about this course was just how different the two instructors are. So Scott and Paul, they've got very different styles of offering corrective feedback, and very different styles of teaching, and it kind of just keeps it nice and interesting on the day. So definitely a lot of value to be had from both of these people, and the input that they can have into your marksmanship or your shooting in general.
And become most natural, most consistent. You're not going to get the deviations, right? So when it's clean bore, every single time.
So after our shooting drills, the next part of the course was trajectory validation. This was a bit more theoretically orientated, and we actually sat undercover, and Scott provided us with a couple of handouts, and provided us with a bit of a theoretical understanding of our trajectory validation, and also wind and how that's affecting the round down range. So this part of the course I found really interesting is learning how to more accurately read and predict wind values, both at the shooter position and down range. So kind of things in the environment to look for, or even how you perceive the wind at your location, what you're feeling, what you're hearing, and those kind of cues that we can look for in our environment. And a lot of these things, they seem like common sense, but the thing is, when you're out there in the shooting line, or you're even out there and you've got plenty of time to take your shot, we just simply don't pay attention to these cues, or maybe the way that you read the wind isn't actually the most accurate way to kind of predict the wind. I felt like I got the most from this part of the course, because before that day I didn't really understand how to with some level of precision gauge wind speed and stuff like that. But like I said, this course is kind of covering all the fundamentals in one day, and there's a hell of a lot to get through. So this is probably the part of the course that was condensed the most, and I think Scott did a great job at taking the key bits of information that's going to help you get started, and he conveyed that information to us so that we can start applying the fundamentals of reading wind, and having a bit better of an idea of what we're doing once completed the course. But there's still so much that we didn't cover on the day, stuff like reading mirage and that kind of stuff. So I think that's what Scott covers in the 2-day course, and I'd like to go and attend that at some stage just to get a more comprehensive understanding of wind and how to read it and how to actually know how it's impacting you around downrange. So yeah, like you can see, we go out into the field essentially, and we've got a kestrel there, and Scott's reading wind values, and we had to go at seeing our environmental cues and orientating ourselves into the wind, and trying to guesstimate what the wind value is, and then seeing how accurately it was, corresponding with what the kestrel is saying. So yeah, it's very hands-on, and I feel like I learned the most from this part of the course, and I definitely think this part of shooting is my biggest knowledge gap. So it's nice to get some formal instruction and to try and be a better shooter and suck less. So yeah, Paul actually covered how to use a sling on a barricade to achieve a very, very solid and stable shooting position.
Someone to tell you how to do it in the sense of where to put it. If it's most comfortable for you, that's where you put it. It's quite that simple.
I found as a left-handed shooter that this was actually a little bit challenging, but we found ways around it to make it work for us, so that we can actually maintain tension on that sling and maintain that stable shooting position and still have a hand free to operate the bolt. So a little bit more challenging as a left-hander, but we found a way to make it work.
Strong side, then weak side, and I think back to strong side.
Well, if you tie off in one spot and you're just going left shoulder, right shoulder, that's easy because your weapon ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And essentially it should be pointing at the target anyway. So to just
hand.
So Scott, he mainly handled the barricade navigation part of the course, and this was really good to see how he navigates his barricades, and how proficiently he moves between positions and builds a really stable shooting position in a really short period of time. But what I really appreciate about the day is everybody's body is slightly different, and Scott's a right-hander, I'm a left-hander, and the way that I'll have to set up for a barricade with my biometric profile and by being a left-hander is going to be somewhat different to how he does it. So he was really flexible in how he approached the corrective feedback, and helped us navigate these barricades. Like he even at some point took my rifle and tried to set up in a left-handed position just to see what would be most comfortable or most proficient. So I found that his teaching style wasn't just confined to the way that he does it or his handedness. He actually really made an effort to try and understand the biometric differences that every shooter may have, and try to offer flexible corrective feedback to help that person achieve a more stable and proficient shooting position. So I really like that about the course.
Actually, if you're going to do that, put this one here up. So put that one here up. Rest your elbow on here. Take the weight. And just pinch that.
That's why I went straight for wrong pocket.
So yeah, like you can see, Scott, the way that he kind of does these barricades is quite different to how a lot of other people decided that they wanted to go about that. And he was willing to work with these people to find a position that's going to be as comfortable and as steady for them as possible, even if it isn't the same way that he classically would prefer to set up for these positions. So overall, I really enjoyed this course, and I feel like I learned a lot. So like I said, whether you're an experienced shooter or you're a beginner shooter, I think there's some value to be had from this course, regardless of your shooting experience. If you're just starting out in the NRL and PRS scene, I think there's a lot of value in being introduced into the fundamentals properly by someone who is experienced and knows what they're talking about, rather than you try and figure it out yourself and potentially learn some bad habits. And it's harder to unlearn a bad habit than it is to just learn the proper way the first time. And like I said, even if you're an experienced shooter, there is still a lot of value in having someone really experienced observe your technique and pick apart small flaws that's costing you maybe 1 or 2%, because in the end all of those things do add up. And the corrective feedback that I was given on the day, I think definitely was really valuable, and I'm going to take it away with me to help me be a better shooter in the future. So I just want to say thanks to Scott and Paul and everyone else supporting Practical Rifle Training for hosting the day and making it possible. And I'm definitely going to go out and have another go, even in the same course, because like I said, there's just too much packed into one day to actually walk away and have retained it all. I had way too much fun shooting and way too much fun just on the day, and that was kind of, you know, let me down a little bit, distracted me from taking in as much as I possibly could. So I'm definitely going to go back and you know, relearn the same things, and hopefully I'll retain a bit more.